In the year 1268, an event unfolded that would spark the creation of the Catholic Church's strange and secretive method for choosing a pope. Pope Clement IV had died, and the cardinals tasked with selecting his successor came down with one of the worst cases of indecision in history. For nearly 3 years, they bickered and stalled while the world waited. The frustrated townspeople of Viterbo, where the cardinals were being hosted, finally took drastic action. They locked them inside the papal palace, tore off the roof to expose them to the elements, and cut their meals to bread and water, all to speed things along. That's right. The world's oldest continuing method for selecting a head of state began with what was essentially a hostage situation. The Catholic Church calls it a conclave, which in Latin means locked room. Fairly fitting name, right? But what happens behind those locked doors? And how did an institution steeped in 2,000 years of tradition evolve a system that still functions in our modern world? For the first 1,000 years of Christianity, popes were selected much like other bishops, by the clergy and people of Rome together, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not so much. Rival factions would elect competing popes, leading to violence in the streets and uncertainty throughout Christendom. In 1059, desperate for order, the Church restricted voting rights exclusively to the College of Cardinals. But even that wasn't enough. Fast forward to 1492. Columbus might have been sailing the ocean blue, but inside the Vatican, something far more scandalous was unfolding. Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia wanted to be pope, badly. So badly that he allegedly arrived at the conclave with 4 mule loads of silver. He made sure other cardinals received bishoprics, castles, and massive yearly incomes, all for their votes. The price tag for the papacy, equivalent to tens of millions in today's dollars. Borgia's investment paid off. He became Pope Alexander VI, and his reign was so notorious for corruption and excess that his election sparked reforms to prevent such blatant vote buying in the future. But here's the thing. For all its scandals and politics, the conclave system has proven remarkably resilient. It has selected popes through wars, plagues, and the rise and fall of empires. So what exactly happens in a modern conclave? When a pope dies or resigns, the cardinals from around the world, currently 135 of them under age 80, gather in Rome. After a mourning period of 15 to 20 days, they enter the Sistine Chapel, take an oath of secrecy, and the master of ceremonies declares extra omnes, everyone out. The doors lock, the world waits. Inside, beneath Michelangelo's breathtaking frescoes, each cardinal receives a paper ballot with the Latin words, Eligo in summum pontificem, I elect as supreme pontiff. One by one, they approach the altar, hold their ballot high, and speak this solemn oath. I call as my witness Christ the Lord, who will be my judge, that my vote is given to the one who, before God, I think should be elected. Then they drop their folded ballot into a chalice. If no cardinal receives a 2/3 majority, which is usually the case in early ballots, the votes are bound together with a needle and thread, then burned in a special stove. Chemicals added to the fire produce the famous black smoke that tells the waiting world, no pope yet. 4 votes are taken each day. The tension builds. Cardinals pray, reflect, and engage in hushed conversations. Alliances form and shift. Modern conclaves are surprisingly quick. Pope Benedict XVI was elected in just 2 days in 2005, and Pope Francis in only 5 ballots over less than 2 days in 2013. But there's a mechanism to prevent deadlocks. If no pope is elected after about 12 days of voting, the rules can change to allow election by a simple majority instead of 2/3. The cardinals themselves can also vote to modify the rules if needed, but they're incentivized to decide quickly. They're completely cut off from the outside world, sleeping in simple rooms at the Vatican's Santa Marta guest house with no phones, internet, or media access. But there's something many people don't realize. Despite the intense secrecy, conclaves have historically been vulnerable to outside influence. From the 1600s until 1903, Catholic monarchs like Spain and Austria claimed a right of exclusion, essentially a veto power over candidates they disliked. In the conclave of 1903, Austria used this veto to block Cardinal Rampolla, the likely winner. The cardinals instead elected Giuseppe Sarto, who became Pope Pius X and promptly abolished the royal veto power forever, probably for the best. Anyways, when a cardinal finally achieves that 2/3 majority, the world sees white smoke billowing from the chapel chimney. Bells ring out across Rome. The senior cardinal deacon steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica and declares to the waiting crowds, Habemus Papam, we have a pope. But inside the chapel, there's one final, intensely human moment. The dean of the College of Cardinals approaches the newly elected man and asks a simple question. Do you accept your canonical election as Supreme Pontiff? In that moment, everything hangs in the balance, because the cardinal can still say no. Pope Benedict XVI reportedly trembled when asked this question in 2005, later describing it as a guillotine falling on me. In 1978, Albino Luciani, who became John Paul I, allegedly whispered, "May God forgive you for what you have done," before accepting. If he accepts, he's immediately asked what name he will take as Pope. His cardinal's red robes are replaced with the white papal cassock, and he steps out onto the balcony of St. Peter's to greet the faithful for the first time. The conclave system has produced scholarly popes and political ones, reformers and conservatives, saints and sinners. It selected the first non-European pope in over a millennium when Argentine Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio became Pope Francis in 2013. What began as a desperate measure to break a deadlock has evolved into a carefully choreographed ritual that balances tradition with practicality. In a world of instant communication and media scrutiny, the conclave remains deliberately analog. Paper ballots, smoke signals, and the human connection of cardinals gathered in one room. Next time you see white smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel, remember, you're witnessing the culmination of nearly 1,000 years of trial and error, scandal and reform, an ancient system still functioning in our modern world.